Hello boxing fans, Grandmaster Ted Gambardella here with number 2 of the 15 things I learned from Manny Pacquiao. You know, recently I went to the Pacquiao versus Clottey fight here in Dallas at the 8th wonder of the world, Dallas Cowboy Stadium. And I learned 15 things and I would like to share them with you now. First thing I learned was how to control your mind and emotions before, during, and after a fight. And the second thing I learned from Manny Pacquiao is that fighting is very mental. I was at a seminar not long ago with the great Royce Gracie, the man who won the first 4 UFC fighting championships. And he's really the father of mixed martial arts in the ring. And I asked him, well, who was his toughest fight? And he said it was in his mind. Then he asked me who was my toughest opponent, and I hesitated until he pointed out that my opponent was in my mind. He suggested that if he were to tell me that he intended to fight me tomorrow, I would not be able to sleep that night due to my mental anxiety. And I couldn't agree more. How many of you could sleep if you knew that Royce Gracie or Manny Pacquiao was going to whip your butt the next day? And that was the entire point. Manny Pacquiao is the master of the mental game of boxing, and he used it to its fullest extent against Clottey. He simply scared Clottey to death. He destroyed Clottey's mind and his confidence. He was scared to fight. He was scared of Manny. He was scared of the fight. He was afraid to fight. He was afraid to get hurt. He was afraid to try anything. Manny had completely destroyed his self-confidence, and he simply was scared to death in the ring. Not that he didn't try. Wait, he didn't try. He didn't try anything because he was mentally psyched out. He lost the fight weeks before in his mind, and nothing was going to change in the ring that would have allowed him to win that fight. He lost the fight mentally. And that meant, of course, he lost the fight physically. It's the mental aspect of fear, anxiety, apprehension, worry, concern, and confusion. That's the real fight when you're in a real fight, when you're in a boxing match. With all the anxieties associated with the possibility of being in an imminent fight, you can't relax, you can't train right, you can't eat right, you don't sleep right. Your entire training and preparation program is confused, diffused, and destroyed in your mind. It is only when you overcome the mental anxiety associated with being in a fight that you can control the actual fight. You fight with your body and your mind. Your body works by mind control. Your hands and feet can't do what they are trained to do if you're not getting the correct signals from your brain. And your mind and your brain can't send you the correct signals if it's confused, excited, anxious, neurotic, scared. You must have a calm, relaxed mind to fight well, and your mental conditioning is just as important as your physical conditioning. Let me give you a great example. My son Teddy is a state champion and regional champion wrestler. He worked very hard mentally and physically to become a champion. He trained 5 to 6 days a week, 2 to 4 hours a day for 10 years to become a state champion. He didn't just train 1 hour, 2 or 3 times a week, like so many martial artists and boxers do. He trained 10 times as much as the average martial arts students and 10 times as long. And he trained his mind to enable him to achieve its full potential. When he first started wrestling, he was much too nervous and anxious to do his best. He couldn't do his technique right. He went too fast, he tried too hard, he was out of breath. And he was exhausted during the fight. And if he went past the second period, he just really couldn't handle it. It was only when he got his mind right that he got his wrestling right. Once he learned to control his mind, he learned to control the wrestling match and his opponents. Many of the guys he wrestled never learned that. One in particular comes to mind. He was probably the best practice wrestler I've ever seen. No one took him down in practice, and he dominated almost all of the other wrestlers in the entire elite camps. Even those who outweighed him by 10, 20, 30 pounds. He was cool, calm, and collected and efficient. He never got tired in class. He never made stupid moves. But when it came time to a real fight in the ring or a wrestling match, he was a completely different person. He became confused, nervous, anxious, and soon lost control of his mind, which in turn lost him control of his breathing, and then he lost control of his muscles, and finally lost control of the wrestling match. One particular example comes to mind. He was wrestling in the Greco-Roman State Championship finals, and so was my son. In Greco-Roman wrestling, you can get a lot of points with a few moves, and if you get up by 12, you win the match. My son was trapped after a bad shot, and his opponent began a series of rolls and switches that got him 11 points. He was ahead 11-0, and Teddy had hold on for almost 30 seconds. And only because of his strong mind and his refusal to lose did he hold on to the end of the match. After the break, he turned to his opponent and said, "You're in trouble now." Now think about that. This is a wrestler 1 point from losing the state championship, and he's telling the other guy, "You're in trouble now." And the guy was. When the second period bell rang, Teddy shot, and it was perfect. He took down the guy and immediately pinned him for the win, crushing the guy. At the exact same tournament, in the other ring, about the same time, the wrestler I'm speaking of was also in trouble. He did a poor shot, and he was down 8-0. And at the break, he turned to the coach, and with a look in his eyes, basically said, I can't win, I quit. And in the second period, he did just that. He quit and was pinned immediately by the guy. And he had beaten this guy in practice weeks, months before, every day. How and why did he lose? He lost in his mind. He became confused, anxious, and he lost control of his mind, which in turn caused him to lose control of his techniques and to lose the match. When you don't control your mind, you can't control a fight, and you will almost always lose. Master Gracie was right, and Manny Pacquiao was right. The toughest opponent is always in your mind, and it's true for you too. And Manny Pacquiao proved it conclusively in his fight against Clottey. Learn to control your mind, and you will learn to control the fight. You cannot win with a weak and confused, nervous mind. You can win with a calm and determined and powerful mind. This is Grandmaster Gambardella. I'll see you next time with another thing I learned from the great Manny Pacquiao.